I think it's a very, very important subject, an interesting topic for us to share the ideas about how important the security strategy, roadmap, and also the ROI. We tend to look into increasing the revenue or maximizing profit. On the other hand, we also need to take care of our cost, make sure the cost is properly managed, and the last part of it is how do we manage risk and compliance. And this is very key in terms of going to the objectives to the board. Defending your assets, safeguarding your assets is very key here to ensure that whatever that you do and invest for the business, the protection is there. And why I'm saying that this is very important, it's important to you guys also. You don't go one hand and telling the board, I need a budget for buying a firewall. And the next time you're coming back, I want to have a next generation firewall. And they'll be asking you, what sort about this? So translating it to the business impact is very key. I'm sure there are more things that we're going to discuss about this.
Put a proper plan strategy. We need to see that why and what kind of thing that we want to secure, first of all, right? So we want to secure our information. Why we want to secure our information? To protect our customers or our personal information, our organization information, right? So this goes back to the enterprise risk management. So if you have a proper asset valuation, then only you can define that what asset would be required to be secured or not, right? So this actually the information security journey started from the whenever you have the enterprise risk management, enterprise risk journey started. So we took that approach. So we put all of our, the asset valuation, asset classifications, define the risk on the assets, and we identify all the risk, and then we define that why we need to mitigate and what we need to mitigate. At the end, the technology or anything else, like how we will do that. So that's the main approach that we have taken in our organization, and then it's been really successful that it's always for the board of directors or the shareholders, for them easier to understand that the business risk, then only technology. They don't want to speak about technology first. They don't want to know about technology. What they don't want to know that what are the risks of the businesses? Is it required? Like suppose for my mobile, maybe it's $2,000 cost. Maybe my MD's mobile is $1,000 cost, but is it the right price for that? No, maybe not, maybe yes, right? So we have to do that kind of evaluations or risk analysis before we, put a plan for the information security strategy and planning. Then the ROI is very easy to understand. If you have proper risk management, risk analysis, it's very easy to define the ROI.
Just a quick note from me. This is just observing. I had a discussion with Dr. Molly just now. We are discussing about just now with the previous topic about people grabbing our credit card info and selling it out over the internet just now. But the crowd here seems to be very calm. So, Jay, I think you're going to miss your sales for next year. So somehow, somewhere, I think that does not work for this crowd. But anyway, little bit, I come from the perspective of a government agency, right? So let's start from the basic, the ROI itself. That itself is a challenging thing for a government agency to define. For you to say you want to do a strategic planning and then you want to do your risk assessment and all that, for a government agency, for us to say, what is our ROI, really? It's the most hardest thing. What's the numbers that we're playing around? See, for companies like bank or certainly, you have your services that ties back to your profits. But for us, most of the portals that the government agency have currently right now is actually for information purposes. So it's down. So what does it impact the businesses? It does not impact anything, right? Because the information is just simply not there. There's no real services yet. So, but there are agencies that are offering services, but there are also those agencies that are offering services online, but also have counter services. And here's the actual thing. The counter services, people do more over the counters rather than going online. Why? I'm not sure. So that is why ROI itself, in the perspective of a government agency, it's very difficult. And for us to actually say, okay, let's put somehow a security, something about it for this particular thing, that's from this perspective of the governing, it's not connected yet. So you're asking me to put all this thing for something that just only putting information out on the internet. So, but it's a discussion, let's talk about it. Maybe we're getting somewhere. I'll go with Dr. Dolly about that.
we are looking at two issues here, strategic IS planning and also ROI. For us in government, we already have the ICT security policy in place. Okay, all of us are required to do that and are hired to it. Yeah, we did it very well. I think ours come up to about 100 over pages. But question is, how well, who look at that document and how well do we comply to it? Right, that's one. And it's not only us that are looking, it's not only the IT people. I'm from the IT perspective. I don't look, I mean, security is one of my portfolio, but I'm also looking a lot at a lot of other things, right? So we need to know how well do people use that document. The second thing on ROI, well, on the light side, I would say, if somebody were to ask, if your management were to ask you, what is your ROI now? We are spending a lot of money on security. Well, I would answer, nothing happens, no incident, no breaches. That is my ROI. Unless they want to see something happen, we handle it, that's another ROI, right? So, but in the government itself, we are having a very small pot of budget, right? And there was one incident when I was trying to fight for budget for SPA, Security Posture Assessment. And we have this budget review officer that comes in. She is from NOF, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So she was saying to me, okay, how much do you need? I said that most probably for me to do a full SPA, I would require about $250,000 ringgit, right? And she looked at me and she said, there's a whole lot of people there who are asking money too. And she looked at me and she said, now, think about this. We are in the, I wouldn't say we are a welfare ministry, but we look after a lot of things that has to do with welfare. The Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development have 5 agencies under it. LPPKN is one of them. JKMM, JKM is Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat, the Welfare Department of Malaysia. And she was asking, should I give you 250,000 or spend that for you to do your testing of your environment to see that everything is secure, or should I spend it on getting beds for the old folks' home whose tenants are sleeping on the floor? How would you answer that? Now that is a very difficult position that where we are put in, because the pot of money is very limited and we have to decide. That question, naturally I would say, being human, I would say, of course, give the money to the welfare side, to the hospital. I don't want to see old people lying on the floor. But, and then she asked me the next question, so what are you going to do with security? Now I have to do creative thinking on how I should look after my security issues. Thanks.
Last year, we set our 3-year information technology plan as a Go Green project. Okay, so it was quite a difficult journey to convince the board of directors what are our technology ideas that we have and we want to implement. So as a human psychology, if you can't see something, so you can't feel it, you don't want to spend money on that. You are very happy to spend money on a PC than a software. That's the reason people are intended to do piracy, right? So we were in our board of directors meeting to define our Go Green project. The information security was the prime on that entire program. One of the board of directors, he just said, suddenly just said, okay, we didn't have any major incidents, such kind of incident last 5 or 10 years. So why you want to invest some money? And he was completely resistant and neglecting the entire concept. Most of the other people, they already understood the the concept of information security and the overall all the ideas. So what I told him, in that meeting, said, okay, you have medical insurance, right? Yes, you have life insurance also. When you travel, you have a travel insurance. How many times you had air crash? Never, or you don't want to also, right? So sometimes there's such kind of things, like when you're talking to the board of directors, you have to be very careful about the people and culture. Okay, what kind of people you're talking to? Okay, so every different single nationalities, they have their own criteria of managing people or talking to this, talking to the different criteria, the topics. So it's very important to understand the cultures and the people mentality. Okay, some understand only the monetary terms. Some understand with the process improvement plan, right? Some understand the risk topics and everything. So overall, if we go for this like risk management concept, you bring the business requirement, take those things, put the risk on those. Ask business to say that, is it important, is a critical system for you? So let business decide it. Who are we to decide what is critical or what is not, right? So investors, shareholders, board of directors, they will decide. Even for the government will decide, people will decide, right? That what is important for them or not, right? So here, that's the most important part. So let them decide what are the critical information they want to save, what they want to safeguard, right? So this is the approach that we have taken, and it really went successfully. So I believe that is one of the very key approach.
So I think in the last 1.5 years back, right, there was a lot of announcement that Anonymous is actually going to attack some of the government agency website, right? So you see it a lot of noise. They make it very loud. They announce it. It's on the papers and all that. So some of the agency that we work with, how did they actually saw this and how did they actually resolve this? It's very simple. So they know the date, right? So they know the date. So it's going to be at certain date at certain time. So what do? Simple. Take out the network. That's it. That is how important it is sometimes. It's very difficult. You know what I'm saying? So the solution is very simple. You don't want to get hacked? Don't put it up over the internet. As simple as that. So, but is it really a solution that we're looking for? Not really. But that's the reality of it, especially in government agencies. But here's the thing. I do believe that we do need this, right? And I do believe the only way for it to work with government agencies is to actually do it as managed services. Because why? You must understand, there's not really a specific CISO for government agency. You see, you don't have a really specific role as a CISO. You have, even the CIOs in government agency are basically mandated by, because why? I need a CIO, because why? Because it's from my arm, right? Then you say, okay, you need a role. Okay, you now the IT person, I give you another role called CIO at the same time. Which is going to be the same thing for CISO also. Since you the CIO guy, I'll give you another role called CISO. Basically, just going to put the burden at one person. But the challenge really is at least for the government side to actually manage all this singularly, rather than put every agency, every ministry having their own role to manage it at one entity, which I think what really is what the government should be doing. So I give you an example of what Faisal mentioned just now about the way how the governing work of insurance and assurance. You see, for managed services currently right now, let's assume it exists, right? I use the managed services to actually manage the whole government security services. Let's assume it's there. And then I can actually manage that, use that company for that purpose, to manage the whole government. One thing that is lacking, which is also from the governing side, at least from the government side, is the way, if say for example, there's a breach happens, who's being responsible? The way it works currently right now, I'm just managing the services. The responsibility is still by the government. But what if we do it like the insurance that he mentioned just now? So which means, I give you a simple example, I think one of the banking industry, one of their customers is currently the Safeguard, right? You know Safeguard, the one that actually put money around and all that, take money from your ATM's machine. They currently have a service right now, very simple. They're not targeting the banks, this one. They're actually targeting all the retailers like the Shell, convenience store and all that. So where your cash, when you deposit your cash, it goes to one of their ATM inside this convenience store. So it's not your normal ATM. It's like a cash deposit, but So what happened is, say for example, your operator, right, you don't have a cash register, it just goes through into their machine. So what do they give as a service? If anything happens to that cash deposit machine, it's their responsibility, not your responsibility. So which means that if there's a robbery that happens, they put in insurance also at the same time to actually make sure that they get paid back. At the same time, your money at the end of the day will always be cash in. You will get your money no matter what, which is the same thing in this case, if it's possible for a government agency. If I do a managed services, if there is a breach, there's a somehow tight services back so that that responsibility not goes to the government agencies, but goes to the other party. But I'm not sure whether it will work, because if you ask for a government agency to manage that, I bet you there will be a lot of risk. Because why? We are just simply not trained. We have not enough people with that kind of talent actually to be trained to monitor the whole of the nation.
What Encik Azhar said just now was true. In a typical government agency, we have the IT division. But we cover everything. I do have a team for the development side. I do have a team for strategic management. I do have a team for technical, network and technical. Who look after security? Actually, we depend on everybody to have an eye on security. Do we have a specific CISO? No, we don't. But then again, but we in the government are fortunate because we do have Mampu and we also have CSM, Cybersecurity Malaysia. And we work very closely with these two bodies. Because any incidences that we capture at our level will be reported directly to Mampu and then escalated also to CSM. And we get advice from these two particular bodies as how to address security issues. Even our ICT security policies are being, we look into Mampu ICT policy securities, and we emulate that and customize it to our agency. And all government agencies, we are looking at every single aspect of it, right? But we don't have anybody that are specifically looking for security issues, but we know what we are supposed to look at, especially on incidences. As for trying to get the buy-in from the management, I agree, it's not an easy task. I think it's hard also for the private sector. It's also hard for the public sector because like what Fazli was saying just now, you can't put money to something that you don't see. So that's why I said earlier, I always tell them, if nothing happened, that is a good ROI. Unless you want to see something happen, right? But then again, it's not that easy to convince them. They say, yeah, why should I give the pot of money to you? That we have to do the buy-in. So usually what I do is, I tell them all the gory stories that is possible. You tell them the incidences, and after that you tell them, what if the data that we have now are being used by WikiLeaks? What would you do? That sometimes get them to think. All the examples, all the things that are happening around us can convince them at certain points to give you certain amount. They won't give you 250,000 just straight out like that, but they will give you certain amount of money. And I usually ask more for training, at least for my people to identify the incidences. Once you identify, we got Mampu and CSM to help us tackle it. Thank you.
So, Mr. Azuddin, so in fact, develop these cybersecurity strategies. What are the first thoughts that come to your mind, and how are you ensuring that it is in line with the business objectives or the business goals or the risk appetite of the organization for that matter?
I think this boils down to the maturity of your organization. You know? I mean, in terms of how the board or the top management perceives looking at the risk management. I think I would like to share about my environment. We are about 100 over years old of company, and we, Malaysia took this company, from the British, since 80s. The corporate governance in Sandarbi, I would say that is already instituted as a culture. Started from 70s, 80s, and when even during the what IT was called as EDP, there was already a EDP audits at that point of time. It's only that when we talk about estates, property development, so people are trying to link up where is information security or cyber security try to fit in or link it up to the exposure that the business is having. So that's where, for security practitioners like us, we need to link up, talking about the lingo that the board understands or management understands. We're talking about risk management here. We're talking about the impact to the business if these security matters are not being managed properly. So we started through, the trends. It's very much easy to, where I started 10 years ago as compared to now. I think now it's even easy for you to convince them because there are tons of stories, right, about data breaches. People get sued, multi-million of dollars, People went to the jail, things which is coming in 2018, European Union GDPR, which can cost the parent company 4% of the total revenue group wide. And for us, instead of having subsidiaries at European, this is exposure to us. So these are the things that you need to give all these sorts of stories to them. It's not a fake stories, it's a real stories. And they have been reading about this. I'm glad to see that few of my board members, they have been reading even the revelations of NSA through the Snowden. And they've been asking. And even the culture of the company, you got to really understand. Even if you go and buy something of the asset, if the asset is lost, right, what impact you? It's just dollars and cents, which you can just insure the assets. But here we're talking about reputation. How far that your organization can tolerate, if there's such breaches that happens or coming out to the newspapers the next day. So I putting this into try to visualize something that will happen, definitely will happen. It's not a matter of if, this is really, really real. It can happen. It's either you get compromised, you know that you are going to be compromised, and what you're going to do next. This is a real story that you need to give, that it's a matter of time when you're going to get compromised. By the time comes, where you are. So these are the things, the context that you need to give to them. This cultivate the culture of risk. If you don't have that kind of things, then there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And what I can share here, once you bring it up to the board members, see what are the stakeholders that you have in your organization. Do you have internal auditors? Do you have risk officers? This is the parties that you can work together, right?
I would again say that, we should have a proper risk management, risk analysis, and we have to understand the organization risk appetite for that. Suddenly, imagine that an organization is running with traditional IT from past couple of decades. For them, the internet services or telecommunication might not be the high priority or critical service. But imagine that for the time being, they start offloading the services, the solutions to the cloud solutions, from the cloud solutions, right? So what will happen on that kind of scenarios? Then the internet or the connectivity or telecommunication will become a critical service, right? So if we have the proper risk analysis of all the services, and it aligned with the business strategies, what is business goal for that, then it's very easy to do the calculation of the ROI. So ROI comes in different format. It's not always about dollar. Dollar is one of the part of the ROI only. What about the reputation? If, like, suppose my company, our website got compromised, what I will lose? Maybe nothing, but what happens if Amazon lose their website, right? So not only, we're not talking about only the money here, also talking about the face value, the reputation of the organization, right? So the people trust, like suppose recently the Samsung, right? So they had to actually write off their entire one's brand name for that $17 billion loss. It's not even related to information security, but it's just an example. What can happen? Like a brand can completely eliminate it from the market, right? So that's very important to present to the board. So board never talk about technology. And traditionally the IT people always love to talk about technology. I want to implement firewall, IDS, IPS. What are those things, right? So maybe some of the new generation, like Gen X, are coming into the board of in the board in different organizations in different countries as well. For them, they will understand that. But again, when you are actually spending money, where will you spend money? I'll give you an example. Let's say that if your home is in your house in middle of the desert, okay, let's say anywhere in the Middle East, let's say in the desert, and you are off to buy a car, and you know that you don't have actually a good road to go to your home. What kind of car you will purchase, right? So you go to the showroom, and if they ask to buy a Ferrari, it's not going to work for you. You need a 4x4, real 4x4. Why these things come to in your mind? Because even if you have money to buy Ferrari, you are not going to buy Ferrari. Because your strategy or your business vision are driving towards a different direction. So for the people like us, who are representing the information security or IT, we should understand the business vision first. If we are not directly reporting to the board of directors, if you are not involved in the yearly planning, yearly or 5-year planning, it's very hard to know that what business is looking forward, right? So it's not about that. It's actually not our mistake. Sometimes in some organizations, they have a different kind of structure. So it's very important to understand the business vision. Because if we don't have the business, we don't understand business vision, we'll never be able to prepare a proper ROI or cost benefit analysis, whatever it is. These things are like tools. Cost benefit analysis, there are hundreds of tools for that. Tools are nothing. You have to understand the business vision and the strategy first.
So interesting enough. So, ma'am, I would just want to pose this particular question to you because, like, you're from the public sector undertakings, and you have been working with various ministries to convince on what are the various initiatives that you would be undertaking on a yearly basis and the like. So, how does the planning, the financial planning, typically works? How does the budget allocation happen on a yearly basis? When you undertake any kind of projects, how do you typically get the buy-in from the various ministries, and how do you typically go about with drafting the security strategy for the next couple of years, and how do you go about with implementing those strategies across the board?
So what we need to do is really strategize and find out what do you actually need for the year. So if you do have security itself, security issues to be addressed, then you put that in a budget and it goes through a different levels of filtering. Even at the first filtering will be if you can buy in your management. So once they agree to it, yes. But there will be a lot of questions. And it's not that, I would say, it's easy to go through that. But like, again, what we have discussed earlier, it's what is important to the agency. Of course, it's, you see all the threats around the world. But then you have to access it to your level. What is your threat? You need to look at that. Yeah, like what Jay was putting out. Have you done your quarantine? Yeah, firewall, IDS, IPS. Yes, you have done. Have you done your cyber hygiene? Yeah, you have done educating and all these things. Those things are important. Now, you have to go back again to check, do you have threats?
Just from the perspective of a government agency, right? It's not that the ROI is not assigned. The ROI is slightly harder. So let me give you a metric that is normally, if I to cut across all agencies, each agency is very unique on its own. But if there were one ROI that cut across all agencies in Malaysia, what are they really afraid of is data loss. If you go to any agency, if they think the most important valuable thing is the data. Whether the data itself there is a value or no value itself is a different question altogether. But data loss. So one of the things that most of the if you go to all the IT project, one of the things that they put into why they have a security features is because to prevent data losses. Because for government, data loss means a lot of things. It just not mean but image, knee, and all that. It's also mean whether or not the credibility of that ministry itself, because the data loss itself ties to the political or things. So those are the major things. So how does you tie a budget towards that? So normally you don't tie a budget towards that. So what happened in most government agencies is they become very creative. You cannot ask for a budget, say, I want to actually protect my data, because why? You are not like, say, immigration or the national registry only, because where your data is really key. So what they do is they hide it under applications. So what you do is, say for example, you ask for a budget, this is my application, this is the application that I want to build, right? Tie that along, because the application is easier. Like Dr. Dolly mentioned just now, it's easier because why? You justify it because this is actually the core business of the agency. You tie that particular budget little bit, weave together with security. That's how they do it most of the time.